We return now to the meeting of European leaders in Paris and US President Donald Trump ruling out the withdrawal of troops from Poland. Here to break down both of these developing stories is Piotr Buras, head of the Warsaw office at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Simple question to start off with. 26 countries will send troops to Ukraine after a peace deal is struck. Why not Poland?
First of all, these 26 countries will not send troops. I mean, they will participate in a coalition of countries which will support a military mission if there is a peace agreement. And Poland is part of it. So it doesn't mean that Poland stays, the fact that Poland does not want to send troops to Ukraine, this is an official position of the Polish government, doesn't mean that Poland will not support this mission. And indeed, the Polish contribution will be, in case, of course, of this mission materializing, very, very substantial, because it is without Poland, without the logistical support, without Polish infrastructure, this mission would not be possible, will not be possible. And of course, it is more of a political question why the Polish government decided, and president, decided to rule out Polish military participation so categorically. I think it was a mistake. I think it weakened Polish international position. But the fact is that also other countries neighboring Russia or neighboring the region of the war conflict, Romania, Finland, have a very similar position. So they basically say we are committed to security guarantees for Ukraine, we are committed to this mission, we are part of the coalition of the willing, but our soldiers will not be sent to Ukraine. Our role will be a different one.
You mentioned there that decision to rule it out was a mistake. It is, at the end of the day, 26 countries agreeing, as you mentioned as well, to some kind of a military reassurance force. Troops can be part of that. Is Poland behind the ball then on this discussion? Because you have 26 countries within the coalition of the willing saying, yes, we will do this. Poland has been one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters. It shares a border with the country. It took more than 1 million refugees. So is Poland slipping behind in terms of even just the optics of being that number one supporter for Ukraine?
I think it is the case, and there are examples of that. Or in the very recent past, the Polish absence in Washington at the very important meeting with Donald Trump of European leaders was yet another mistake. I think that was difficult to explain why neither Polish Prime Minister nor President took part. Perhaps this is a sign of some domestic political struggle around also the support for Ukraine. But also, I think the fact that support for Ukraine was not the most important message sent by President Nawrocki yesterday in Washington is also something which is very concerning. I think the fact that the whole focus of the Polish public opinion, of the political leaders, of the President Nawrocki was during this very important visit was on the number of troops, of American troops stationed in Poland, and not on the most fundamental issue for Poland's and Europe's security, which is the future of Ukraine and the need for the US to back Ukraine in its efforts to fend off the Russian aggression. I think this is indeed, it's supporting your thesis that something is perhaps happening here and it is not very positive.
So I'm interested in that perspective because I spoke to a Civic Coalition MP last night and we talked about it being a win for Poland, given that Donald Trump had confirmed that troops will stay in Poland. But what you're saying is actually the focus was all wrong and perhaps it wasn't such a big win for Poland as Poland seems to be making it out to be.
Yes, I think, it is of course important that the Polish president heard from the American president what he wanted to hear and what the Polish public opinion wanted to hear. We wanted to hear that the American troops will not leave Poland, and I hope that Trump's promise will materialize. But we know that Trump's promises not always materialize. So I think there is an important declaration, but it's only a declaration. But I think when you talk about the success or not success of President Nawrocki's visit to Washington, I think it is not only important what we heard from the American president, but also what kind of messages the Polish president conveyed there. And I think, and I'm deeply convinced that at this particular moment, where basically the future of European security and the future of the conflict or the war in Ukraine is being decided, it is of utmost importance that the Polish president, like other European leaders, has one clear, very important message to the American president, that the future of European security, also Poland's security, depends on the outcome of the war in Ukraine, and that it is in the interest of the US to push Russia more, to impose sanctions, to commit also, if not troops, then substantial support for this mission, which is now being prepared by the European coalition, and so on and so forth. And I think that was not the main topic of, as far as we know, the main topic of the conversation of President Nawrocki with Mr. Trump. And I think it was a mistake, and in that it is very disappointing.
To speak then about Ukraine, some say we're back at square one here. Russia and Ukraine obviously can't agree. Everyone is trying to keep America on board. I've been to countless sort of peace talks and peace summits in various cities. Can we honestly say in good faith that we are making progress on Ukraine?
I think we are, it's difficult because, we are not making progress and this is the main problem, in pushing Russia into acceptance of a need for serious peace negotiations. So we are collectively, as the West, we are doing far too little. And I think we need to impose more sanctions. We need to support Ukraine even more. And especially, of course, the US role here is crucial. So if the US abstains from doing what is actually needed by the biggest power of this world, then the West will be in troubles. So I think in that sense we are doing far too less. We do make progress when it comes to our internal coordination. And this meeting today in Paris is a sign of really Europeans getting their act together, and it's an important part of the West's preparation for the post-war time. But we need to make sure that this step can be made in the future. So we need to force Russia to make peace, or at least a ceasefire, possible, and this is still not the case.
So talk to me about how important this post-war peacekeeping deployment, this reassurance force, could be in keeping Putin out. To your point there of how does a lasting peace happen? I mean, is a lasting peace impossible without some kind of a reassurance force in Ukraine?
I think it will be very difficult to have almost impossible to have a lasting peace without a substantial reassurance for Ukraine from the Western powers, including the US. And for two reasons. Because it would not deter Russia, and if there is no reassurance for Ukraine, no security guarantees. And secondly, it would be a disincentive for Ukraine to stop fighting, because the Ukrainians would know that they would be left alone with the still aggressive Russia without any Western assistance. So I think, yes, this is an absolutely crucial part of any post-war solution or a peace agreement, a really requirement for such a peace or a ceasefire to be sustainable.
We're seeing reports as we go to air tonight that from the Financial Times that the US will cut some funds to train and equip militaries in Eastern Europe countries that could be at some point on the front line with Russia. Yesterday we had Donald Trump say troops are staying in Poland. You mentioned before that Donald Trump can easily make declarations. I mean, how concerning is this kind of rhetoric that we hear, one thing from Donald Trump, then another thing from officials, and in a way here on the eastern flank we just don't know what's up?
I think we need really, especially in Poland, the eastern flank, to have a more holistic approach and view of what's happening. It's really not about whether we have 8,000, 10,000 or 12,000 American troops in Poland. It is much more important what is the overall approach of Trump to Europe, also to our part of Europe. If, for example, the 10,000 soldiers from the US army remain in Poland, but thousands or tens of thousands of American soldiers are withdrawn from other parts of Europe, that would be a massive weakening of European security and Poland's security as well. And I think this is what we need to expect. This is what will be happening, and I would take these declarations of American officials seriously, and I think the global posture review to be announced in October will be quite a sobering experience probably for the Europeans, regardless of whether some of those soldiers will be deployed or redeployed to Poland or anywhere else. And I think what matters really is the fact that the US will reduce its military presence in Europe, and we will have to find ways to replace it.
Piotr Buras, head of the Warsaw office at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.